because you should have gotten one. And it should have listed out a whole lot of the other,
Statements. So I'm gonna read their statements.
I'll tell her right now.
Like congratulations to the winner, like on the Friday, and you ask them, you know, to join, come to the board meeting, and these are the winners. We didn't have a board meeting in July, so that's why. Okay, I'll check on that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to here, I can charge you. Those are always fun.
Okay, and so then I say, if you can't come, please send me a statement so that, you know.
Oh yeah, there's one right there.
Henry's here.
Is that okay?
And they do that once a month, kind of in the middle of the month, and we're usually a month behind. So, it's done by a group of employees. I think there's a committee, and basically, the person who received it, like Mark, received it for June, and he nominated.
Did you get wet again?
Mariana.
Yesterday you were tripping.
So,
They said you were walking
with the
in
pass it forward, but this,
amazing.
this, there's like
Really good.
box, and you.
Are you ready,
there are
Kathy?
forms
I'm
that
ready,
you
I'm
fill out.
sorry. It's all right.
Anybody can nominate anybody.
Oh, no, what happened to Martha?
Once a month.
Oh.
Pull, you know, like pulling it,
She'll be back.
yeah, pulling it out of the box. And so
Oh, she's down
her
there.
name was pulled out,
Oh, with Jenny.
this time, and then Elizabeth
Okay.
Rodriguez's name was pulled out.
We've got to do something with it. I mean, we're always so perfect.
Earlier?
Earlier dinner?
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit earlier, like even 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Because he comes about 5, so he
Yeah,
came like
so
quarter to 5.
yeah. Well, 4:30.
4:30? Okay, and then we wouldn't rush so much.
Yeah.
Then people could get up at quarter till or whenever. Yeah, okay. Would you like me to have that changed?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. We have a quorum, so I'll call us to order. Welcome, everybody. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda with the change of which policies are we pulling off out of the consent? All the board policies, removing the board policies from the consent calendar. Is there a second? I mean, is there a first?
I need to take off special meeting of July 12th because I have to abstain from that.
Okay. And removing special meeting from July 12th. So we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, public comment. No? Okay. Okay, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The employee of the month is first, and we have 2 months to present our employees of the month since we did not meet in July. So for June, the Pass It Forward Award, Dorothy Ray from Palms nominated Mark Valadez from OIT. Is either Dorothy or Mark here?
No, but Mark sent a statement. He said, "I'm sorry I'm unable to attend the board meeting due to a previous engagement. Being nominated by Dorothy in June was a shock and an honor. She could have picked anyone on campus. The fact that she picked me was humbling."
Thank you. Thanks to Dorothy for nominating Mark Valadez. For our June Wowgram, Melissa Hubbard from Palms nominated Henry Miñardo from Palms. And I see that Henry is here. Come on, Henry, don't be shy. Congratulations, Henry, and thanks to Melissa for nominating you.
I guess, first of all, I want to say
You need to come over here so we can record you.
thank you, Chairman, members of the board, Madam President. I want to thank everybody, first of all, for this special award. To me, it's a very special award. I want to thank my team, my staff, my peers, the executive team, my peers. This college has been a wonderful place for me. It's been a great place to work. I owe this dedication to my staff. I have a wonderful staff. I'm extremely exhilarated to work with them. They motivate me on a daily basis. I'm extremely proud of their accomplishments. So really, this isn't about an award for me. It's really about an award for my staff and the help and the accomplishments that they've allowed me to achieve. And it's to my peers in this wonderful college. It's a great place. I love working here, and I love working with the staff and peers. So thank you all.
Congratulations, Henry. Thank you. Now we move to the July Employees of the Month. Pass it forward. Mark Valadez from Palms nominated Mariano Chavez from OIT. Now we know that Mark isn't here. How about Mariano?
Mariano sent a statement. He said, I am honored to have received the Pass It Forward Award for July. Thank you, Mark, for the recognition and for the work you do for the college. And thank you to my colleagues in the board for everything you do for the college.
Congratulations to Mariano, and thanks to Mark for nominating him. The July Wowgram, Susan Weaver with Student Employment nominated Elizabeth Rodriguez with Palms. And I see Elizabeth. Véngase. Come on up. Véngase. Susan is
I'll
not
just
here.
read what Susan said about nominating Elizabeth. She said, I have had the pleasure of knowing Elizabeth for about 5 or 6 months now. I don't mean to be messy, but Elizabeth makes sure I have a sparkling clean working space. Sometimes she smiles and says she will bring her vacuum around. I know Elizabeth takes her job seriously and she never complains. As a matter of fact, if you're around her, you can tell that she enjoys her job. I respect and am grateful to her, not just for her work, but for her positive attitude, smile, and daily greeting.
Felicitaciones, Elizabeth. Would you like to say something? ¿Quiere decir algo? Gracias a todos. ¿Y quién trajo con usted hoy? Hola, señor. Felicitaciones. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you, Elizabeth. So moving on, the President's report. And can I have twice as much time since it's for 2 months? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, we have been so busy. This summer was not relaxing by any means. We were doing much to, first of all, in the first item, to implement and begin planning the spending of our bond proceeds. And as you know before, I had mentioned that we have a local bond advisory committee, and we have been meeting weekly, during the summer. We just met today, as a matter of fact. And the members of the advisory committee, that includes Henry and Nick and Margaret and Jeremy Lovato and Catherine Fox Allert and Uta Jensen Carr, as well as some ex officio members, Andrea Mueller, Jessica Garcia, and Amy Powell, have been a tremendous help in moving forward. And every time we have a meeting, Nick says, I'm so glad that we're meeting. This committee is a huge help in terms of working through a lot of the details that we must consider as we make sure that we follow all the state requirements, from procurement to bids to RFPs, you name it. I mean, there's a lot of details, including bringing things forward for you to approve once we're at that point. Anyway, we spent a lot of time initially with the fitness center. For this first drawdown, we have $1 million that we're spending, and so the water fountains are in. That was so important for all our fitness center users. And Todd and marketing staff is working to come up with signage so that we can put up throughout the fitness center indicating your bond dollars at work, so that it is recognized that that's where that came from, and thanking everybody for that. So we have a plan for the fitness center in order to have the the furnishings, the flooring, carpeting, the flooring in the exercise room with all the equipment, and then finishing the floor in the gym, the 3 gyms. And our plan is to complete that whole project, which at this point is just under $1 million for all of that. We have a little contingency to have it complete by the beginning of the spring semester. That is the plan. We have to push it, and we may need to have a special meeting of the board to approve the expenditure when we're ready for that. But at this point, we're about ready to hire a design firm, architectural design firm, to help us with that process, correct? So that was the big one that we really wanted to address initially, because we had so much support from the community, and they really wanted the fitness center improved, and we're doing that. The Wi-Fi improvements under OIT, that is underway now, and the project calls to be completed by the 30th of September, but it looks like it'll be ready a couple weeks earlier, by about the 17th of September. And then you'll flip the switch and it'll be like magic, right, Jeremy? Yes, so that we'll have much better connections, Wi-Fi connections, et cetera. Let's see, right now for the Automotive Technology Center, we are, architectural design firms are developing their proposals, and those will be submitted by next Wednesday. And we have a committee that will review them and then select an architectural design firm. And we're hoping to be able to decide on that firm before the end of, about the 12th of September, I think, because that's the next LBAC meeting. And let me see, then for this drawdown, we had about $500,000 available for instructional improvements and infrastructure improvements. And we sure have a lot of needs in that arena. And it's going to be, even more than $500,000 for this first drawdown. But we have prioritized them in order to improve instruction, and as it relates to health and safety, I mentioned to you yesterday, one of them was the ventilation system in woodworking. Also finishing an outdoor area of the ceramics program that has been on the list for a long time. Finishing the greenhouse, among other things. And so that is underway. And I think that those are the main items that we're working on, that the Local Bond Advisory Committee has been a huge help. So in terms of, moving forward, that we are underway with our negotiating process, with our collective bargaining process. So that is, there's a meeting scheduled on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. The negotiating teams will meet again. They've met quite a bit in the summer, but there has been a break there, but we're starting up again Friday. So some of the new programs that have been initiated to increase student success includes the PILAS program, or the internship program. So far we have 25 students that have begun 8-week paid internships that we received the money from Lionel and Lionel Foundation, and the SFCC Foundation is also going to match it, another $40,000. And then there's another, of those 25 students, 13 of them are going to continue for 5-week additional internships. And there's much more that Yael, our coordinator, is working on. And just today I got an email from a local nonprofit that is interested in hiring some of our students in the allied health fields, and also providing scholarships. This was just an initial request that came in. We're going to set up the meeting and get more students to work. Isn't that great? So now Viva, our free fitness program for full-time students, is doing very, very well. It was a team effort, including our technology, Office of Technology, our student services area, and of course the fitness center. And so thus far, as of today, earlier today, we had 227 students that have they have the waiver. They've obtained the waiver, because they have to sign that waiver in order to get into the fitness center. It's about 35% of the students who are either in an HBER class or taking advantage of Viva, of those that are taking 12 credits or more. So at this point, 35% are active and in fitness, wellness mode. So that's really exciting, and this is just the third day of the semester, which is where the students are getting reminded that they can go, if they're taking 12 credits or more, they can go online and fill out the waiver online and then start going on, as you know, Monday through Thursday, 1 to 6, or Friday, all day, to use the fitness center facilities. So we're very excited that we believe it's being successful, for the first time that for the pilot that we have this semester. I had mentioned yesterday that Bellevue University has successfully completed the New Mexico Higher Education Department's authorization process, and I checked with Ms. Estrada regarding programs that Bellevue's bringing in, and she indicates that they're still fine-tuning what those programs are going to be. They're finalizing. It's not final yet, but it's in process. But they will have their advisor on board in September, Ms. Estrada?
We anticipate that the job would be posted in September. They want
Okay.
to work with us. Specifically, they're hoping to hire from within the community.
Okay.
Even though it'll be a Bellevue employee. So then what we'll see is they're going to post it, and SFCC faculty and staff will be involved in the actual final interview process. They want to listen to that. So they actually think the office itself will be staffed and ready to go in October.
Okay.
But all the surge stuff will happen in September.
Yeah. So we're so happy because this took a few years to get the approval. So yay, Bellevue, for joining HEC. Let's see, we had a successful convocation with, again, OIT, tremendous help. Laura Mulry helped me with my PowerPoint, and Todd, and so many people that contributed. Thanks to Chair Siegel and Board Member Romero for being present that morning. And then a few days later, on August 16th, Thursday, we had our Academic and Student Affairs Adjunct Faculty Resource Fair Dinner and Contract Signing. We had about 100 adjunct faculty that attended, and it was also a very successful event. So regarding the Science on a Sphere, I thought it was very remarkable that, Foundation Board member Ed Barker has hosted Science on a Sphere presentations for more than 750 people, averaging tours once every 3 days. I know that Jeremy Lovato has also been very instrumental in conducting and doing demonstrations on the Science on the Sphere, so thank you to you and to Ed Barker. And there's just a lot of different groups that have taken advantage of it, and we're excited about the request under RPSP, where we're hoping to have a better coordinated and organized effort to promote and have the community utilize Science on a Sphere, as well as the planetarium. Also, earlier this month, I met with all the 6 northern New Mexico presidents of universities and colleges, with the incoming director of Los Alamos National Labs, Dr. Tom Mason. So even though he doesn't start till November 1, he wanted to meet with us and just get to know us and introduce himself. And he is currently the president of Triad National Security, which is the organization that is the new manager of Los Alamos. And along with him that morning was a representative from Texas A&M, the University of California System, and Battelle Memorial Institute, which are the 3 entities that comprise Triad National Security. So that was a very positive breakfast. He wanted to know how he could support us, indicating that he, is very much wanting to be connected to education, higher education in New Mexico. So that was a positive breakfast. You already know, some of you saw in the paper, as well as the New York Times, that we hosted a roundtable on renewable energy and solar energy, in which U.S. Representative Michelle Lujan Grisham and Washington State Governor Jay Inslee toured our Trade and Technology, Advanced Technology Center, and had a very interesting roundtable with a lot of experts in the field. Their names are listed in the report, and they were very impressed, as all are when they come to our facility, and all that we offer to our students in preparing them for solar and renewable energy field careers. Let's see, we did support, as you know, the city of Santa Fe on animating the Midtown campus this summer with 2 events, one in July supporting the showing of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for grandparents and their grandkids, and we had a mini lecture by Dr. Andrew Lovato on the history of the Midtown campus, a drone presentation, as well as a fashion show by our fashion design students. We had the tiny house, and we had representatives from the HEC, as well as Ms. Estrada, as well as Marcos Maez from recruiting, and many other staff that were there. It was very exciting. And then we did it again. Just last Friday, we were back at Midtown for the screening of Aventurera. And what was really neat is that, because it was a Spanish theme, we had history, Carlos Rovelo, who's an adjunct instructor at SFCC. He did a presentation on the history of chocolate, and there was also the tasting of chocolate, which was really delicious. And then we had Dr. Lovato back, who did a presentation on the history of Mexico, and we had a chalk art fun for the children that were present.
So what was the turnout in the community for those?
So you know, the Willy Wonka event in July was a larger turnout. I would say maybe a little over 100 people is my guess. I mean, maybe some of you have a better feel. Was it larger?
So for the Willy Wonka,
Yeah.
the Chocolate Factory night, there was over 100 people.
Yeah, okay, over. And then for the chocolate, it was more specialized because it was well, it wasn't just chocolate. For the Aventurera screening, excuse me, it was very specialized. So I would say there was about 50.
I would say
50 people that were there, but they were very enthusiastic about it. So I'd say they were a success. You know, they did bring people onto the campus. Oh, and I can't forget that on Friday, besides the chocolate and Dr. Lovato, we also had our culinary arts food truck that was also there providing, selling tacos. So it was great. They were delicious. I've been on a variety of radio programs in anticipation of the beginning of the fall semester, from KSFR and Tom Trowbridge to Esteban Gonzalez and Que Suave. So those were fun. I'm getting more comfortable doing radio programs now because I've done them a few times. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? That I had, known this already, that both Rebecca Estrada and Yash Morimoto are participants in the 2018-19 Presidential Fellows of the Aspen Institute program, and they participated at Stanford University in July for the first of, I believe it's 3 training sessions that they'll be going to, so we are proud of them. I want to also mention that during the first week of classes, I met with all of the Palm staff in order just to greet them and thank them for all the hard work that they do, and reinforcing that what they do is part of our efforts at the college to make this institution an outstanding place. So we had a great meeting and came up with some ideas of questions that they had of things that we can improve in order to make their jobs more successful. So that was excellent. Tomorrow I will be attending an event that is a annual convocation of the New Mexico and Sonoran Commission, and that is for the purpose of working together on educational projects of mutual interest. So that will be tomorrow and Friday. I'm excited about that. There was a group of visitors from Sonora, the state of Sonora in Mexico, that came probably in April and met with me, and that was very positive. We had a retreat of the New Mexico, and some of these aren't on the, they're not on the report, but I just wanted you to know that in July, late July, met in a retreat with the other presidents that belong to the New Mexico independent community colleges, and we approved our new bylaws. And let's see, it was Becky Rowley is the president of the association, and I was elected the secretary-treasurer of the association. So I'll be helping Becky with that. At the retreat, David Abbey was also present from the LFC, as was the new principal analyst, Mark Valenzuela, who visited our college a few weeks later after the retreat. But they talked about that today was going to be hearings by the LFC on the funding formula. And so he gave us a very quick snapshot of it, and then about a week and a half ago, we received an embargoed copy of the report that was going to be given, and we were able to review it, and Yash Muramoto was a huge help in terms of we could also submit a response. And we did so, and he was there at the hearings in Taos today, but we definitely need to do some follow-up with our legislators, particularly around the part of the report in which there was some concerns expressed because more certificates have been offered now, or not just offered, have been awarded. And of course, we're just meeting the needs and the requests of the community who want individuals that are trained in these certificates. And we want to do a stronger job of communicating that to our legislative delegation so that they understand that what is in the report from the LFC isn't necessarily we don't agree, the colleges don't agree, and NMICC submitted a similar follow-up in terms of response, I should say, to the report. So we are following up some more, and of course, Yash and I haven't talked at length yet, but he's got some ideas, and I really appreciate that you went to that. Well, let's see, what else did I want to mention? Maybe just a few things. Our senior counselor, Janelle Johnson, recently attended a leadership training with the American College Counseling Association in DC. So that's really important on mental health training. And above that, I forgot that our campus and security officers have attended valuable trainings to support securing our campus and keeping it safe. So that was Chris Gatler and Noé Villarreal. Last thing that I want to mention, it's not on the, well, two things. Before I do that, we had a number of very valuable individuals that retired this summer, and that included Jeff Atwell, Rosemary Garcia, Kathy Romero, David Marquardt, and Nan Keegan, and together all of those had over 100 years of service to SFCC, so they will be missed, but they sure did lots for our college. And Madam Chair, I will stop there. You've got the rest, unless there are some questions.
Any questions?
Just one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Any further information about the Midtown campus and what's happening with the development there?
The last thing that, and again, I haven't had follow-up communication with the mayor, although on other topics I have, but not on that one. I think the last thing I've seen was what you all saw in the paper, where there was some guidelines that they had adopted, that the city had adopted, and we're going to utilize in sending out RFPs in order for responses to be provided. But I haven't seen timing or specifics about that as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing, though, because I did mention the mayor, he has established a commission or a ad hoc group to assist in determining how we can best recruit and retain police officers for the city of Santa Fe. And he asked me and other members of the community to serve on that. And when I was sitting with him at the IAIA dinner, I said to him that the college could possibly play a key role in providing leadership training for new officers. And he says, write it down. Oh, yes, and we had a successful, thank you, Henry, successful capital outlay presentation at the HED hearings on August 6th, and we took forward the two priorities that this body approved on May 23rd. It was very positive.
And those were?
Those were, priority one had to do primarily with infrastructure improvements to supplement and leverage the dollars that we got for the bond, from the bond election, the parking lots, the HVAC, the roofs. And then the second one was instructional improvement priorities. So they were each $4 million. So they didn't blink, thinking they were too much. I know we won't get them both, but, so we were happy. Thank you very much,
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
thank you very much. Enrollment report?
Chair Siegel, members of the board, President Cervantes, we are here to present the enrollment report, and I've given this to you already. I just want to point out that we still have dual credit registrations to go, as well as late starting classes to register. We are 8.24% down in FTE and credit hours, almost 6% down in head count. You've heard the good news earlier in the work session about our fall-to-fall retention. It's super exciting for us, 66%, the highest we've had in the history of the institution. And then the 22% graduation rate. And as you know, we had the wildly important goal of the 20 by 20. And so we're holding steady there. And that's exciting news. I think Marcos has a couple of other numbers to share with you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Peters. Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President. Just some other exciting things that we'd like to share with you. Now, regarding the student head count for this week, that 5.76%, just 2 weeks ago, we were down in head count over 10%. So in 2 weeks, we have jumped up nearly 5%. Now, while we're still down in those numbers, and while we understand that we still need to continue to work as hard as possible, meaning that we will continue to have our boots on the ground. We will continue to go to the libraries. We will continue to go to the Chavez Center, to the high schools, our regular visits. We will continue to send out those emails, text messages, phone calls, wonderful campus tours, the best campus tours anywhere in the state of New Mexico. We will continue to do that to continue to make sure that these numbers get better. That is our mission, and that is something that we absolutely take to heart. But I still think that it is important to highlight that in 2 weeks, we've gone up nearly 5%. Also, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President, another thing that I am very excited to share with you all today is we got our numbers from 2016, 2017 high school matriculated graduates into college. And I'm happy to report that as far as head count goes for high school students that are matriculating into SFCC, this is the best year that we have had, highest number of head count that we have had in over 5 years. That is the third highest number we have had in 10 years. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the open houses, where we are busing high school students to come to SFCC and see firsthand, our increased visits to SFCC, and enough cannot be said about the quality of our dual credit program and that introducing the students to what SFCC is all about. So we definitely wanted to highlight that. And also just some very quick slides of what SFCC is doing, not only with boots on the ground, but with our digital recruitment. So Mason, if we could get those slides, that would be fantastic.
Before you go on, so how many students in actuality is that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The number of high school students that matriculated into SFCC in 2016-2017 is 263 students.
Out of
What
how many
about-
graduates?
Out of over 600 graduates.
Thank you.
263. And what was in prior years?
Prior years has been comparable. There's been 250, 200, 260. The highest we had was 280, and that was 5 years ago.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, and yes, and actually this is the perfect segue. So we talk a lot about our boots on the ground. We talk a lot about our emails and phone calls and tours, But we also think that it is extremely important to move into that 21st century. And we have with us today our newest team member, although she's been here for a few months already, but I think it's important to highlight just how important her role is to our department in recruitment, in marketing. This is Haley Horowitz, and she serves SFCC as our digital marketing and recruitment specialist. So she is the staff member who sends out those text messages to our students, who answers their questions, their comments, their concerns. She also measures us when we go out into the community and we do our geo-targeting and that nature. So I'm actually going to let her speak in just a moment, but this is just some quick highlights of our digital marketing and recruitment highlights. So Mason, if we could get to the next slide, please. So traditionally, you can still see that we still have our print, our radio, our boots on the ground, our banners, our imaging, but you can see modern, we're doing our mobile, online, and social media. Next slide, please. And Haley, if you could explain to the board what you do in regards to this nature.
Thank you, Marcos. Chair Siegel, President Cervantes, members of the board. So what you see here, this is one sample of some of the tactics we've used over the summer to increase awareness and increase registration for fall 2018. What we're looking at here are some examples of our mobile ad campaigns. And something that's really great about this is that we found out that as a result of these ads, 315 people walked into our doors, onto our campus. How do we know that? The really wonderful thing about digital marketing and specifically mobile advertising is that we can get very specific about who we target, when we target, where we target. And so some of the tactics we use, we're targeting community locations, transit locations, workforce centers. On the days that Marcos and Daniela were at the Chavez Center or the Southside Library, we were able to target mobile users in that location at that time. And so when they're served ads, we are able to track when they walk into our doors. And that's how we get that number of 315, which is pretty exciting. In conjunction with our mobile advertising, we had social media advertising, which you see here. And we use the same messaging to keep our efforts as integrated as possible. So you see, you belong here. And when users click on that, we created a landing page on our website so people were directed right to a place where they could gather more information and also give us their information so we can follow up with them. And so many people filled out these forms, and each user who did fill out this form very quickly received a hard copy information packet with application materials and also received follow-up text messages through our new text messaging system. And as you can see, we had the results from the social media campaign garnered almost 70,000 impressions to over 15,000 people, which is, you know, those are some pretty good numbers.
What does an impression mean?
An impression means that that's the number of times the ad was put out. And so, and then the 15,000, the over 15,000 is important because that's the number of people. So some people will have received or did receive the advertisement more than once. So we followed them around. And from that, 3,000 people visited our landing page. So 3,000 people clicked onto that ad and went to our landing page. And from that, we had over 120 people volunteer their information to us so that we could follow up with them. And, you know, as I said, we did send out information packets, but we also sent text messaging, and you can see my example, the how is registration for fall coming along text message. So this text message was sent to the 91 of those more than 120 people. The 91 is because those are the people who did have mobile phone numbers that we could text to. 22 people responded to me, and I'll get to that in a second. But what's really important to me is, in my experience, and especially with email marketing, anytime I've sent out an email campaign, I will have some people unsubscribe. With the text messaging, I have not had one person unsubscribe. Not one person has said, don't bother me anymore, which is fantastic. And in fact, these are some of the responses I got. A lot of them were very positive. Some people followed up to say, hey, thanks, I'm all set and ready to start classes. Some people asked more questions, and I was able to personally follow up with them and help them on their way, help them find the resources they needed. One specific example was there was a woman who wasn't sure that she was going to have financial aid secured in time and was very worried about that and was sending me text messages, expressing concern. And I was able to continue to follow up with her and ask her how her process was going, if she needed any extra help, after she followed up with other people. And we did, in fact, get her financial aid secured. And she messaged back to say, thank you so much. I've started classes and everything's going great. And so, it's just speaks to the importance of really targeted efforts like this that really meets a student where they are when they're there. And something else I'd like to say about that is that, in my work, I've really identified a need to be able to continue to follow students through their journey and send messaging that pertains to them when they are at that step in their journey. For some of these people, it wouldn't have been very beneficial to send them, something that I might send somebody who's already been here for 2 years or somebody who is not aware of SFCC at all. And so we're working on that and following through with our data.
And I'm just going to conclude on this last slide. Thanks for your time, Chair Siegel, members of the board, President Cervantes. As we do this, we're gathering a lot of information, and we're building relationships with students, as you're seeing. And it's hard to articulate sometimes what we're talking about when we talk about these like acronyms, a CRM, an ERP, and these can be kind of abstract in some senses. But for somebody like Haley, it's not. It's either, you either have a tool to help you do your job well, or you have a bunch of sprawling spreadsheets, right? And so what we're just sharing is our final thought is just that we are working closely with OIT and other members of the college to start using a software tool that is called a CRM, or in this case, we're calling it a student relationship management system, where we can organize, automate, manage our interactions and our info sharing. Because we believe that we help students succeed when we can invest in their full journey. And that means from them starting as prospects all the way through. And so as an organization, it's also important that we start breaking down these silos. Okay, well, the student enrolled, our job's done. We want to follow the student through their process and see how they do, and then reflect on that data later, right? And so we're invested in this very closely, and we're working with people, and we're kind of coming up with a solution. We're having a conversation about this enterprise resource planning that the college will go into, the ERP. But in the meantime, we'll be working on some stopgap solutions to help us just kind of systematize a bit. So thanks a lot for your time.
Any questions? George?
Todd, what software are you using for this management system?
Well, we're actually exploring right now. There's a wealth of options. Some are very heavy, some are quite lightweight. And so in our particular case, marketing is often like a guinea pig for these types of things in other colleges. So we are just like, make us your guinea pig, throw something at us and we'll adopt it. So to answer your question, it's called Agile. It's fairly inexpensive and lightweight, and I think we can get started with it without, creating a headache for Jeremy and his team down the road.
Right. Do you know the foundation is using Bloomerang?
Yes, and that has some very helpful elements to it as well.
And I just wonder about the idea of the college maybe having a single CRM that everybody would use rather than having multiple.
Thank you. Yeah, you sound a lot like Jeremy Lovato, our CIO. That's a really good idea, and we haven't thought about that. So we'll explore that with with Kelly and Deborah. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, maybe it will go up 5% in the next 2 weeks.
You've raised our expectations.
I do want to make sure you all know that Haley is a former SFCC student and a former student of mine. You know, I can't resist.
Great. Okay. We have communications, the faculty senate report, staff senate, student government. I think we all got a email from Zuby saying that they really haven't had much time to meet, and so there's no faculty senate report. Do we have a staff senate report? Yes, we do. Because you all meet all the time, all year round.
They're here.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President, we do meet, however, less frequently during the summer, so you won't see as much in your packets from us. Really not a lot to report. We mentioned the collaborative annual employee review. We did support HR in doing 3 trainings for supervisors during convocation, so that process has kicked off. That is to do the pre-evaluation part where they agree on some parameters, and I'll make sure a copy of that is in your packets for next month now that the form has been finalized. And then we wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the purpose of the review was really focused around growth and development, and so that's an important piece. And then we had Employee Relations Manager Patrick Simpson come and do a presentation on compostable containers, possibly for our food services. I think the ones in the East Wing are recyclable, but we use styrofoam in the main cafeteria, and that's such a bad thing, given our sustainability. So we'd like to move forward with that, and we'll be reporting back on that.
Good, good.
All I have to report.
Okay, yes.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the Staff Senate for all the work that you do to assist the college, particularly for the CARE process. They came on a couple of occasions to the executive team. We had a great dialogue, and they took input and improved the process tremendously. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand for questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Madam Student Government President.
Good afternoon, Chair Siegel, members of the board, and interim president Cervantes. It's our first meeting, and for those who don't know me, my name is Noemi Bojorquez Flores, and I am the student government president here at Santa Fe Community College. And today for the report, what I have for you all is student government was involved in the strategic planning during the summer. Also, student government was part of the Student Ambassador Retreat, the Freedom Ambassador Retreat. We have our historian who is part of the Governance Council, and she is also part of the Wi-Fi planning. So our historian Vigil is part of these two, and then we also have our Vice President Sigala, who is part of PDAC. We are looking to, having our treasurer Arellano be part of the Finance Committee. And today we had our swear-in, which President Cervantes did an amazing job, and we thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to do this for us. We had refreshments, we welcomed students back, we reached out to students. We have swag now, so we were sharing our swag everywhere. We have nice little backpacks, water bottles, keychains, and also we have a little business card booklet that we have, so it has every single one of our cards in there. Our first official meeting will be Wednesday, August 29th at noon. And also, SGA would like to thank the governing board and the executive team for listening to the student voice and It was consisting of student ambassadors, freedom ambassadors, student government, and clubs and organizations. We thank you for the opportunity to get free access to the gym, which aligns with the strategic plan. And we look forward to seeing the positive progress and results of this pilot program. Thank you very much. And that is all from our side.
I have a question. Freedom Ambassador, what is?
So it's like student ambassadors, but for the master's program students.
Any other comments, questions?
Madam Chair, as President Bojorquez mentioned, I had the honor to swear in the new officers for Student Government Association today, and it was an impressive group. It is an impressive group. There was great attendance of faculty, staff, and students at the swearing-in in the campus center, and each of the officers had an opportunity to comment about what they hope to contribute to the college, and I was so impressed because each and every one talked about wanting to develop community, that they were all one and wanted to help the college become bigger and better. So I was very impressed with the fact that they were each so articulate and had that common message. President Bojorquez.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who went out to support us today. And we look forward to continue doing great work with students and staff, faculty, and the administrative team. And we are looking to grow more day by day. Thank you.
Okay, on to approval of the consent agenda with the things that we removed. So we removed July 21st, special meeting, and, was that right?
July 12th.
12th, oh yeah. And then the 4 governing board policies. So can we have a motion to approve the other items?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, let's go to those items removed. First one is special meeting of July 12th. Jack, did you have a correction? Or?
No corrections, just I have to abstain because I wasn't present.
Oh, at the July 12th meeting?
Correct.
Okay. So can we have a motion to approve those minutes for the July 12th meeting?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So Jack wants to abstain
Oh,
on that vote only.
okay.
So we need to, now that we've extracted it from the consent agenda, now we need to put it back up
Okay.
and have a motion to approve them.
I move approval of the minutes of the special meeting of July 12th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And show Jack
Abstain.
abstaining. Okay, now we're going to the 4 board policies for final reading. And we had a couple of changes that we discussed in the work session.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President, we made a few changes to the Section 1 policies 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and 1-4. Did you want me to project those or just read the changes out? What's your?
Just read them.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Policy 1-1, SFCC establishing college policies. Under policy statement, we removed the second appearance of the word administration, so that sentence reads, SFCC board policies address the college's mission, degree requirements, tuition, compensation, personnel, investment and budget guidelines, and marketing and public relations, as well as how the board will manage its affairs. On page 3, under, J, resolutions, A, we removed the words to or, and that now reads, resolutions proposed by the board that affect an existing policy will be shared with the administration for appropriate action. And under B, we changed the word action to consideration so that that now reads, resolutions proposed to the board that affect an existing policy with the exception of section 1 will be shared with the governance council and then presented to the board for consideration. Those are the only changes on policy 1-1. On
Move for approval.
I beg your pardon?
I said move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
On policy 1-2, under policy statement, the second paragraph, we added the words "the values of" to the last sentence, which now reads, actually, yeah, it's the whole paragraph. In fulfilling their fiduciary and educational responsibilities, all board members have a duty to put the necessary time, energy, study, and collaboration to the work of the board, to put college interests above personal interests, to promote and be guided by the policies of the college, and to honor the values of objectivity, confidentiality, and diligence in decision-making. On page 2, we removed some definitions because they did not appear in the policy itself. And then so we removed the definitions for travel expenses, anything related to travel expenses. On page 3, under policy process A, 2 meetings, we removed the words in the last sentence "of the college." So it reads, "The president must be notified of all agenda items placed on the agenda." At the bottom of the page, we made some edits to number 5, vacancies, so that we deleted the second sentence and the fifth sentence, so that it now reads, "A vacancy on the governing board other than by the expiration of a member's team shall be fulfilled by appointment of a new member by the remaining members." Or may appoint an individual to fill the vacancy without a selection process. An individual appointed to fill a vacancy shall serve until the next community college board election, at which time candidates may choose to file for election to fill the vacant position to serve the remainder of the unexpired term. Just under that, under duties of the board, we removed the word "and" under number 1 so that it reads, "Approve the mission, vision, and long-term goals as defined in the college's strategic plan to promote student learning." On page 5, we added some language to number 9. Acknowledge the president is the only employee, and the language we added is "who is directly selected and supervised by the board, and thus the board has the exclusive privilege and duty to regularly evaluate the president and hold them accountable." If you'll go down to educational benefits B, we struck the words "like other employees" so that that sentence now reads, "Board members may apply for access free of charge to the William C. Witter Fitness Education Center." And under D, we added the words "for members to register" so that it now reads, "The board may approve tuition and fee waivers for members to register for additional classes at the college or agree to reimburse members for attending seminars, educational programs, or classes when the board determines that it is in the best interest of the college and sufficient funds are available." I think I need a little water, pardon me. That concludes the edits on that policy.
Okay, can we have a motion for,
You've got under the authority, we removed employee.
I thought she said that.
No, we didn't get to authority.
Okay.
I think I have to bring that back to make that, okay. Under authority, policy 6-7, we will propose that we remove the word "employee" under that particular policy.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And actually, if I could back up just a moment, under recommended repeal, I would like to ask if we could remove 1-6 administrative services. We have to approve policy 1-31 before 1-6 can be repealed.
But we
So
don't
since,
One dash, oh, I see.
under repeal, yeah. So I didn't want to go through with approvals of everything without,
Except we didn't pull those off the consent agenda, so they've already been approved.
oh, okay, great.
So we're only doing 1 through 4.
Well, you can't repeal unless you've approved, so,
We repealed first.
oh, okay.
So we have no policy for 20 minutes.
We actually need to reinstate administrative services then, because there are parts of it that have not yet, that were moved into 1-31. So you can't have the conflict of repealing 1-6 without having the replacement language in 1-31.
But we have it on the agenda as repeal under the final, so it shouldn't have been there?
If we hadn't moved it, right, it shouldn't have been there. Thank you. It should not have been there.
Okay.
My mistake.
All right.
Unrepeal.
Okay.
Is there a banana in the house?
All right. So we've done 1 and 2. And we haven't done 3 and 4 yet?
And then we'll do the
And then
repeal.
we'll do
So number 3.
unrepealing.
Under policy overview, we refined the language to read, "The policy is designed to foster public confidence in the integrity of Santa Fe Community College and provides guidance on avoiding even the appearance of a conflict of interest by SFCC's publicly elected governing board members." Under policy statement, we added the words "to local governing bodies" in the last sentence, so it now reads, "This policy does not replace or supplant any state or federal law governing conflict of interest applicable to local governing bodies or nonprofit and charitable organizations."
Is that it?
No, there's more. On page 2, number 2, conflict of interest is a situation in which an individual might benefit or appear to benefit personally from a decision made in their official capacity. We added the words "or appear to benefit." Under number 5, financial interest, we added the words "immediate family member," so it now reads, "Financial interest is one in which the person or immediate family member has directly or indirectly through business or investment," and then follows down. We deleted the word "honoraria" because it doesn't appear in the policy. And on page 3, we added number 8 under policy process A, vote on a question in which they have a conflict of interest.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve?
There's one more edit, sorry. There's a couple more edits. On page 5, under I, compensation and gifts, we changed the amount under number 1 to $50, so that it reads, "A board member shall not accept directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, and/or entertainment with a monetary value exceeding $50 from anyone engaged in business transactions with the college." And we changed the amount in number 2, so it now reads, "The aggregate of gifts, gratuities, favors, and/or entertainment received during any calendar year shall not exceed $250. And finally, we reworded the statement of accountability and responsibility to read, "The integrity of the board's processes and decisions depends on respecting the fact that conflicts of interest may exist and that they must be acknowledged and addressed. Board members shall annually complete and sign a conflict of interest form. When a conflict of interest arises that is not on the form, board members shall acknowledge at a public meeting that they have a conflict of interest. In the case of a member who has a conflict of interest but has not disclosed it, then the member is in violation of this policy if they do not disclose it." And that's all of the edits.
Okay, is there a motion for 1-3?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 1-4.
On page 1, under policy statement, we added the words "and educational" and "the values of," so that it now reads, "In fulfilling its fiduciary and educational responsibilities, all board members have a duty to put the appropriate amount of time, energy, study, and collaboration to the work of the board, put college interests above personal interests, to promote and be guided by SFCC policies, and to honor the values of objectivity, confidentiality, and diligence in decision-making." And under statement of accountability and responsibility, we refined the words to read, "It is the responsibility of each governing board member to abide by this policy and to question any member who appears to be deviating from it." And those are the only edits on that particular.
Okay. A motion for 1-4?
Move to approve?
A second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we need a motion to reinstate policy 1-6, administrative services.
Madam Chair, I move that we reinstate policy 1-6.
Second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, board members who worked on this. Now we are on the non-consent items, approval of financial reports. It's raining.
It's raining.
Not too hard.
Not like yesterday.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, President Cervantes. In front of you, we have two financial reports. One is for the year ended June 30th, 2017, and another financial report is for the month of July for fiscal year 19.
And we have reviewed these in our financial
Finance
review
Committee
committee,
yesterday.
and so if you could just hit the highlights.
Highlights. So June 30th is, of course, the end of our year, and we have some promising information here to report. The operating bank account cash balance improved by about $1 million. It's about $975,000. A lot of that has to do with an increase in tuition and fees of improvement there of about $313,000, along with $709,000 in local appropriation improvement from year to year. State appropriations remained flat for the year, but we expected that. It just went down slightly, about $65,000. In total, ING's revenues were up by $708,000. On the expense side, our expenses were down about $1 million, and that's 3%. A large portion of that was just how we developed the budget for FY18. With that, we've discussed a little bit about the public service fund. Our kids campus area shows about an $89,000 deficit, but we discussed that we're going to move about $35,000 of that into an available fund. And we have improvement in the auxiliary area of our budget, which is the bookstore and the food service, which will basically balance out the deficit in the public service fund. With that, that's the summary. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any
Yes.
questions? Yes, George.
Could you just explain a little bit about Kids Campus and what you're doing with that $88,000 and how you're moving it to where? And if it's a deficit, how do you move a deficit?
We will move expenses in this area into a IDC fund that has an available balance.
IDC is some funding that we are able to get off of the different grants that the college has to manage. They allow us to have some indirect cost recovery, and so we'll move some of those expenses onto that fund, and therefore we'll decrease that 89,000 by about around $30,000.
And that's legal to do that?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask.
Anything else on June? Okay, on to July.
Our July, Madam Chair, board members, President Cervantes, we also discussed the July report yesterday. We discussed the report as well with the Financial Oversight, Financial Review Committee of the college. And in our discussions, I did mention that July is always a strange month. We're closing the year. We have a lot of transactions that have to do with accruals for the prior year. July is the first month in the new fiscal year, and so there's a lot of timing issues that are taking place. Just to summarize the July information, we have in our operating bank account, we had a balance of 7.7 million, and so that's showing an increase in the bank account if you compare it to the prior year, about $1.7 million. I wouldn't imagine that we will continue to have that improvement, but we'll see how things play out the rest of the year. Tuition and fees revenues were down when you compare this July to the prior by 7%, and a decreased total of $208,000. Local appropriations, we haven't booked any appropriations yet. State appropriations are at $906,000. It's an increase of 14% and an increase in a dollar amount of $108,000. That has to do with the legislative appropriation increase that occurred earlier in the legislative session this year. That totaled out to be about a total of right around $450,000 to the college. And ING's revenues, if you look at them in total, they were down by $100,000, and ING expenses were down year to year by $275,000, and that's 15%. I think that will level off as we continue through the year. And with that, I can stand for any questions on July.
Any questions? Okay, can we have a motion to accept the June and July financial reports? Did you have a question?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Now we have the greenhouse, T-TAC, interior.
Go ahead and let Henry kick this off.
Members of the board, Chairman, President Cervantes, thank you all for allowing us to present before you this evening. Yeah, that's a great idea. Want to introduce one of the new members of our team. I'll let you self-introduce. Tammy, if you don't mind.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board, Madam President. My name is Tammy Briscoe West, and I am a consultant working with SFCC. This is my second go-around working the procurement office. I own and operate West LLC, which is a private company that works consulting and advising governments throughout the state of New Mexico on matters involving procurement, little bit of budget and finance, but mostly procurement. And so I was asked to come on board and assist your staff due to shortage of staff in your procurement office recently due to various reasons. So I've been helping out and kind of acting as an advisory capacity, basically, to your staff. I've very much enjoyed having the pleasure of integrating, even if briefly, with everybody. Everybody's been wonderful to work with on all levels, and I just have to say that everybody from the top down to your students, I think it's contagious here. The tone set is amazing, and I think you should be very proud. But anyway, I just want to wrap it up saying that I'm drafting documents, advising and such, but turning it over to staff and you all for approval, and this is the item that we're going to be discussing is a it's not a large contract, but it's large enough to come before you, and I think the manner in which I've drafted the document is a little bit different than what you're used to seeing, so I'm here to stand for any questions that you may have in that regard and answer any questions about the project in connection with Henry as well.
Just to add on a little bit about Tammy, she's a little modest there. She spent many years, and I think retired from Chavez County, in their county government operations as the procurement officer. And she also teaches the New Mexico Edge course for Chief Procurement Officer certification.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Tammy. And just to reiterate, Tammy's been a enormous wealth to the team and has helped us enormously to get these contracts written. So thank you very much, Tammy. Just to refresh your all memory on this is the contract to complete the build out of the greenhouse interior. We call it MEP. It's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. This will allow us to finish the inside of the greenhouse, install all of the iGrow equipment and instructional equipment that is used to grow their produce in the greenhouse. This will conclude the project. We're asking you to approve the project. It's about $248,000, and we're just asking you to approve this project so we can get it underway. Funding will be taken from the local general obligation bond. And at this point, we'll stand for any questions.
And the total of that is?
The total of the total of the project is $248,000 plus contingencies, so roughly about $270,000.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to highlight that the contract is with a local company, and I think that's really nice when the college is able to do that.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Member Keith. And just to also reiterate to Member Sullivan, we've beefed this contract up. We've gave a schedule for the contractor, and we've also added some clauses there if they don't follow through on their schedule.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to say that I always, a red flag always raises for me when we talk about on-call contracts. And I understand from our discussion yesterday that the staff has gone through the procurement process and has selected a number of on-call contractors to respond on a rapid basis as needed. And this is very convenient. But it's also unfortunately been, in one particular case that I have read about in the papers in Santa Fe County, a vehicle for abuse, and resulted in legal proceedings. So what controls do you have in place on these contracts that you wouldn't normally have in place on standard procurement bid contracts?
Madam Chairman, Member Sullivan, the legislature is actually very aware that this has been abused in the past and actually implemented some new laws in the procurement code, which is a state statute, to address that. And they put some caps in regarding these type of contracts, multi-year awards specifically regarding awarding to contractors as well as architects and the like, so that in the law there's actually monetary caps in place that you can't exceed, as well as term limits. So under construction, for example, you can only go a maximum of 3 years with any contractor, and you can only pay out a certain amount under that, in that 3 years, and then you cannot proceed with awarding any further projects to that contractor. So it's actually written into the law mechanisms that prevent as much abuse as has gone on in the past by bodies all over the state and across the nation, actually. But in addition to that, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, that your agency does something that a lot of other agencies I work with I don't see, and that they have these on-calls in place that allow them to contract just directly with somebody, but instead they get some competition going in that they request additional quotes and have the on-call contractors compete by giving bids as well once they're under contract. So I think that ensures that you're still getting fair market value at the time that you're soliciting for that project, even though you already have them under contract. I think that it's a pretty good mechanism to ensure that there's not that abuse.
Is there a limit on how much any one contractor can be awarded in that 3 years?
Yes, 10 million is the limit.
Okay.
And I know that's quite a high limit. In addition to that, I know that procurement staff as well as Nick and Henry are aware that as an agency, you don't want to award too many projects to one vendor at the same time, because then you have the problem of not being able to meet time constraints. You know, one project sacrifices for another potentially. And so you can see that we've written into the amendment some language guaranteeing that no one project will be at the detriment of another and that type of thing. And in addition to that, I don't know that it's really written into policy, but the approach is that no one contractor will be given too many jobs at one time, and that's why you have so many under on-call contracts, so you can spread that work around and not have just one contractor doing all the work.
When you request bids or quotes from these on-call contractors to bid against each other, what documents are they provided?
They are providing written documentation, and I believe it's Exhibit A. It should be Exhibit A in your documents.
No, what do you provide them?
What do we provide them? I'd have to defer to Henry on this particular project because I came in after that was done. I know in my experience working here that a complete scope of work with detailed information on what's expected, but I'll have to defer to Henry on that.
Member Sullivan, members of the board, Chairman, Interim President Cervantes, thank you for that question, and thank you for these questions, Member Sullivan. They're very relevant to our business, and we take it very seriously. With regards to the on-call contractors, it is not only allowed in our state procurement code, but in a community as small as ours, we don't have that much access to contractors. There's just not that many, particularly in this commercial environment that we have. And so this allows us to provide multiple contracts at one time and get multiple vendors in here as opposed to just one contractor. That's number one. Number two, we included all 16 vendors that responded to our on-call. So those are the majority of vendors in our community that respond to all our bids anyway. So we enhanced that quote process by including all our vendors on call. And then thirdly, whenever we request an on-call quote, we provide them a thorough scope of work. We provide them an on-site visit.
And who provides that, and who prepares that scope of work?
PALM, our department, prepares that scope of work.
See, there's where I have a question. Because one of the biggest problems I've seen in on-call contracts with contractors where the owner agency provides a scope of work is that let's say it goes out to 3 different on-call contractors to provide a quote, is that they interpret that scope differently. And usually that scope can be interpreted differently. It may not have all the specifications that you would normally have from an architect or an engineer when you're bidding a project. And so typically they'll come back with various conditions. They're saying, we're assuming the soils are fine, or we're assuming this, or we're assuming that. And so you get back very often a response which is conditioned, which of course in a routine bid project, you cannot accept conditioned responses. It's bid according to the specifications, period. So how do you deal with that? How do you evaluate these conditioned responses from the various contractors when you ask them for quotes?
Well, technically, with regards to the scope of work, we evaluate based on the technical merits of their work and the work they're going to accomplish with regards to our scope of work. That's the first thing we look at. Secondly, just to kind of broaden a response to your question, it's the same scope of work that we would prepare for an on-call vendor, we would prepare for an RFP vendor. And we're going to get the same questions from the RFP vendor that we're going to get from the on-call vendor. We still have to answer those questions before they submit their quote.
But correct me if I'm wrong, are you retaining an architect or an engineer to prepare these specifications?
In some cases, yes. Like in the case of room 327 renovation, we retain an architect and we retain an on-call vendor. And yes, the architect is with us all along and helps us project management.
But that's not necessarily required.
It's not necessarily required, no. But in this case, but we did acquire an A&E firm, Bridges and Paxton, designed the interior design of that build-out, and now this contractor is going to build it.
Yeah.
So everything is specified in our scope of work, in the design, and specifically on their quote.
Yeah, that's fine for this contract. Again, my concerns are that that in future procurements under on-call contracts, you do get this difference of opinions as to what the scope is, and on occasion it leads to fairly significant change orders during the course of the work. Now, we do have in our policies limits on what those change orders can be. And so if you run into that, you're going to end up back here asking for change order approvals. But I just want to be on record as saying that that I'm not at all fantastically enthusiastic about this method of procurement. I do understand the need, and everyone that does it says we can get something done quickly, but my experience has been what it means is we can get it done more conveniently. It doesn't always end up in something done more quickly. So, I certainly don't see any problems with the contract that's under the agenda for approval tonight, but I'm you'll hear from me again when you come up with another one of these, because it's in my opinion, a slippery slope, and I hope we don't wind up on it. Thank you.
Tammy, did you want to add something? Yeah.
I just have one final comment in regard to your comment about the unknowns. I'm very familiar with that as well after 25 years of working with contractors. And in particular, on this particular quote, the first time I looked at it, it had already been quoted prior to bringing it to the board. And at the very bottom of it, it said, does not include, and it had a paragraph about this big that said all the things it didn't include, all those unknowns. And so we worked really diligently, because I said that wasn't acceptable, with the contractor to say what's unknown. And one of the things he brought up were wage rates. They're not specific to this project. Can we get that? Yes, we can. So we worked to get those, so he knew what that factor was and he could factor that in. And we worked with them over a period of about 2.5 weeks to say, your price has to be firm fixed. It has to be the entire price for the whole project and can't have any unknowns that we're going to have to change order up. I actually come from Chaves County, where their commission says we tighten the belt and don't approve change orders. So I come from there, and that's how I looked at this as well. And I agree it can be a very slippery slope, but I'm going to do my best, as long as I'm working with these guys, to ensure that that doesn't happen and those change orders don't come before you.
Just to reiterate Tammy's comments, Member Sullivan, it's been my practice in the 6 years I've been at this college that when we discuss with a vendor, we discuss change orders before we sign a contract. and we are a zero tolerance change order facility. That's not to say there's emergencies and there's deficiencies in drawings sometimes, but with regards to what's on the prints and what we expect to get paid for based on our scope of work, we don't allow change orders, and our contractors know that. And to be truthful with you, in my experience, and I've had 30 years engineering experience in project management, on-call vendors versus RFP vendors, you're going to get change orders both ways, and you got to respond to those change orders in both instances. And in my experience, they're the same responses. You respond to the on-call vendor in the same manner you would respond to an RFP vendor. So they're very similar processes. It's just the on-call has been vetted, wage rates have been set, and those vendors are going to operate under contracts that have already been approved. So it's a well-vetted process in my experience. We're using that process because it's available to us. It's not necessarily a matter of our choice.
And on that note, we're using them for smaller projects. We're not going to build the automotive center with a.
No, we're using them on smaller projects. On the larger projects, we would obviously go out for RFP.
Any other comments, questions? Can we have a motion to approve this contract?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. So now we have, let's see, the HED financial fourth quarter.
Madam Chair, board members, this is the quarterly report. We review quarterly, and
Do we?
Good idea.
Darn.
exactly.
This is the required form where you check the boxes and.
Yes, it's a required form. Pretty straightforward, but it is mandatory that we submit this to HED every quarter. And the form really just asks for information related to, did the institution have to ask for expedited appropriation, miss a payroll, miss vendor payments, things like that. We've answered no to all of them, so it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, then we have the RPSP.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, we've reviewed the RPSP recommendations based on the funding proposals that we received over the internal process that we established at the college and had the ad hoc RPSP Advisory Committee review and recommend, and I have those before you. The total of the RPSP requests that came from the college is $694,588. They're in priority order. And then we have the additional 2 requests that are part of statewide priorities, or that they are based on statewide priorities. The Santa Fe Community College Nursing Program expansion for $253,900. And the New Mexico Small Business Development Center for $4,655,600. As I indicated to you, this last request is slightly higher than in past years. We're not sure how the legislature will respond to the slightly higher request. I see that the New Mexico Small Business Development Center Director Russell Wyrick is here, and I don't know if he wants to respond to that in terms of if you have information that we don't have regarding, asking for a little more money there for the SBDCs, if you want to come forward. Russell.
And while he's coming up, how much more is the nursing expense?
No, that's the same.
That's the same.
Yes, there's no change there.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, President. To the Small Business Development Center, we've got a lot of initiatives. This year, we were the state's largest job creator, almost 2-to-1 for the Economic Development Department for the state, and at a cost of $1,200 per job created. When the average in the state for Economic Development Department job creation runs anywhere from $7,000 per job up to $15,000 to $16,000 per job. So, and that represents an improvement over the last 3 years. 3.5 years ago, we were approximately about $3,500 per job. So a significant improvement in our outcomes. The work that's done on the border, the international trade by Jerry, a lot of work done by Jerry Pacheco. People don't realize that's the SBDC that does that. So we have new programs and initiatives. Too much to go into this evening, but we are already getting some input from some of the legislators that have specific interest in us expanding our international trade efforts, as well as our technology transfer efforts. We have some other projects in regards to, we developed a virtual counseling center program that Alaska has adopted, and so they're looking for us to expand that, as well as a program that we have for in-home child care businesses for the Native American community. So we feel that we have some strong support legislatively. Again, we don't know to the full degree, but it's been something that we've kind of been, we're getting encouraged to pursue.
And how much is that increase in this line
It's
item?
600,000.
600,000.
And in perspective, because again, we're part of higher education, when the budget cuts occurred, we've got 63 employees across the state. We can't charge for our services. So we took the full cut or brunt of that through higher education. And then also in addition, every time they do salary increases, the RPSP projects don't get to participate in that. So like this last period cost us $60,000 of our budget to cover those salary increases. And I think when it balanced out was about 10,000, contributed. So it's just getting back and recovering and investing it wisely.
Those are excellent numbers. Yeah. Only 1,000 something for every job created. They should double SBDC.
Right. I guess the question, just out of interest, how do you do that?
Well, we have 18 centers across the state. All of them are located at the higher education institutions, and they collaborate with their host institutions. We have the 7 procurement and technical assistance center advisors across the state that help the individuals pursue government contracts, and then we have the International Business Accelerator. So the jobs we do they're hard-fought jobs. They're one-on-one work with small business owners to help them realize their dream, or they have they may have a company with 25 employees, and we help them, add the 10 employees and find the financing to make that growth. One job at it, often one job at a time.
Well.
Any questions? Yeah, Martha.
So of the 33 counties in New Mexico, how many do you anticipate that you serve?
Okay, Madam Chair, Member Romero, we serve all 30. We're required by, it's a U.S. Small Business Administration grant program, and we're required by law to cover all 33 counties. And so we do have centers spread out across the state specifically for that reason. And as I mentioned, the virtual center design that we developed technology-wise, more or less imagine a system where a person can walk into in front of a computer. They don't have to touch it or anything. The advisor on the opposite end can initiate the call. If they have a business plan, they can just set it on the scanner printer there, pull it through, and then pull it across the machine onto the advisor's desktop, do the work, and then print the finished plan back there for the client. So we're looking at this as a way to open up centers in ways that there'd be like literally you have a community, let's say, that has 800 people. There's no way you could financially afford to staff it with an employee. Right. We're looking at these virtual centers as a way to just like literally open up the door. As long as the community can provide us with a room where the door can close for confidentiality purposes and an internet connection, we can put a virtual SBDC center there.
So what proportion of your services go to rural counties?
Madam Chair, Member Romero, we have 3 centers. We have one in Santa Fe at the Higher Education Center. We have one in Albuquerque that covers Sandoval and Bernalillo County. And then we have one in Las Cruces. The remainder of those centers are what we would consider rural centers. And so from a volume perspective, I would say about 2/3 of our services are provided to the rural communities.
Thank you.
Other questions? Great.
Thank you so much, Russell, for being here and for explaining. And good work.
You must love this, Kathy.
I was just at the Higher Education Center this week, and I walked by the Santa Fe SVDC offices, and they had a young woman in their office who was learning how to program her own website because she was opening her business and was putting a website up to tell people about her business. So all good work.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Is this the RESPECT program? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Or was that something else? Did I miss that?
Okay, any further questions or discussion about this list? Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Or a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair, I just
Yes.
want to, for the record, to note that I'm abstaining from voting on this
okay.
proposal. There is one of these proposals that is designed to increase the workforce for my employer, and I don't want there to be a perceived conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. Donna, you noted that. Okay,
It's the last
a
one.
perceived conflict. All right, approval for the amendment to the president's contract. This is just an amendment to add 10 days of vacation, a whopping 10 days to, additional to our president's contract. Any questions or discussion? We have a motion?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was easy.
That was easy.
Approval for higher ed to set the mill rate. Oh, yeah, mill rates. These very important mill rates that do not raise the taxes for anyone in Santa Fe County.
Yes, Madam Chair, board members, President Cervantes, we did discuss this yesterday at our board finance committee meeting, and we had a lengthy conversation over what was probably almost a year of effort on this mill levy ballot question effort. The resolution really kind of explains a little bit of the history where in November the board approved a resolution allowing it to be considered on a ballot, which was presented in February, on February 6th during a public election. And there were two questions on that ballot. One was to raise the mill levy amount from 3 to 3.35. And sort of the creative financing idea on that was to reduce the debt service mill rate by the same amount that the operating mill was raised under two questions. So the first question asked to raise operating mill levy by, to 3.35, and the second question asked to issue $17 million in bonds, which was an effective question of if the $17 million in bonds were approved, that would mean the mill rate would go down to 0.65. And so HED and DFA are currently in the process of certifying rates, and because we did make that change, this resolution will really help to codify the board's intention to make sure that we did not raise any taxes, that it was a no tax bond question. And then the resolution will also be utilized by DFA to impose those rates later on in the year when tax bills are issued in November. With that, I can stand for any questions that you might have.
So these have to be also certified by the county?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, the flow through goes sort of like HED will get preliminary property tax valuations around this time, and then based on those preliminary estimates, they will put together the preliminary mill levy rates. Send that to DFA. I believe DFA will send that to the counties. Counties will certify them, and then the treasurers will know what to put on tax bills.
Great. Okay, any questions? How about a motion to approve?
So move?
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one last action item, the approval of sort of reversing a decision we made a year ago on tuition rates.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, as we discussed yesterday at the Finance Committee meeting, we believe that the intent of that action last year did not really meet the goals that we had hoped for, and primarily the systems that, although the systems were set up to try and minimize a negative impact to our underserved populations, there was feedback from the community that not all students benefited from the college's effort. Also, the college's revenue increase from the change in tuition policy was minimal. And lastly, the college did not systematically engage in expanding its online programming and recruiting out-of-state students, which is what we thought we would do last year when it was changed. So these are the reasons that we would like to reinstate. And as you heard yesterday, the impact would be minimal in terms of the budget forecast.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I could just add that we would be in a better position to implement this in the spring semester.
Yes.
And not now.
Yes.
So that's really important.
Yes.
And so for this fiscal year, the impact would be approximately about $75,000, we believe. Of course, in the next fiscal year, it would be an entire year of basically having less tuition revenue.
However, we may be implementing those things we talked about doing before of increasing our out-of-state use of our online programs.
Yes. That's true, because we're working to increase the number of online programs and the way we package them in terms of them being of more interest to our students. And then the other thing, too, is there is a lot of interest from some of our underserved communities regarding various programs that we offer, particularly the Early Childhood Bilingual Program. And just today, Deborah Bolt was indicating that she's got a donor that's very interested in supporting that. So that's an example of a program that we believe could increase and bring in more enrollment.
I was looking at the numbers a little bit more in detail today, and there was an obvious decrease in out-of-state individuals, so head count, when we imposed this rate increase for last fiscal year. So that's 17-18 fiscal year and academic year. And so what I would imagine, as we've based these reductions in revenue off of less, decreasing basically out-of-state tuition. I would imagine more people will come and take courses here that fit into that category of residency. So that's hard to predict, but I did notice that today.
Good. Okay, so our motion would be to approve returning tuition for students taking 6 or less credits per semester to the in-state out-of-district rate. Do we have a
In the
motion?
spring, effective spring
Effective
2019.
Yes, yes. thank
Upon
you.
a waiver, they have to get a waiver. I don't think it's automatic, is it?
Yeah,
had
yes,
been.
yeah, this would,
Why are we doing a waiver then?
we're not doing a waiver.
We're doing it now because it's not in existence. And in order for them to be categorized, I believe, as, which is, let me find
This is
it.
the policy we had before we changed.
Yeah. Petition for in-state. They had to petition for in-state tuition, so they were asking a waiver of the existing policy in order to pay less tuition.
My
That's where-
understanding from our conversation yesterday was that even if, that they can petition for in-state tuition if they show they have an in-state connection somehow, even though they may not physically have their permanent residence in New Mexico. Is that not correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
Now she's going to help us clarify.
I didn't think it was automatic, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Board Member Sullivan, it is automatic as long as they could demonstrate that they actually have, they are in state for as long as they could demonstrate their certain characteristics.
And how do they demonstrate
In
that?
this particular case, this is less than 6 credit hours, so you don't have to get the in-state, in-district rates. If you're taking less than 6 credit hours, and you're not in-state, in-district, then you're automatically placed into the in-state, out-of-district rates. So the cutoff point really is the first cutoff point. Are you taking less than 6 or less credit hours?
Okay.
Right. Then, if you're taking 6 or less credit hours, there's only 2 buckets. One bucket is in-district, and one bucket is out-of-district.
Okay.
Unless they could prove that they're a Santa Fe resident through our tuition review process, you're automatically placed into that in-state, out-of-district rate.
Yes.
Rebecca?
So they can prove something, they have to fill out a document.
As long as they're taking less than 6 credit hours,
And if it's over 6, what happens?
then they get placed into, they need to prove to get the in-state, out-of-district rate.
They get, I can't hear you.
If they are taking more than 6 credit hours, then they're automatically placed into the out-of-state rate unless they could document that they're in.
That's my point. And how do they document that?
So there is a number of different ways to document that according to the New Mexico. There's about 18 different waivers according to the state tuition policies. But it could be something like showing the local address in terms of their bills. There's a number of different ways.
Driver's license, utility bill.
Excuse me, let me finish my questioning. So the over 6 hours for in-state tuition rates, under our current policy, they couldn't do that. We simply said, if you're out of state, you pay this out-of-state rate.
Yes, so if you're taking more than 6 credit hours.
You just paid the out-of-state rate.
Yes.
Now we're saying, in addition to the under 6 hours cutoff, if you're over 6 hours, you're eligible.
No, if you're taking more than 6 credit hours, then you're not eligible.
You
still need to pay the out-of-state rate. If you're taking 6 or less.
That's what I'm saying.
Trying to do.
I understand, but if you're over 6 hours, they can submit a waiver request and be evaluated and be considered as in-state residents. Is
They
that
meet the requirements.
they meet the requirements?
Yes.
Can they do that now, or is that
People could do that right now, yes.
they can do that now even with our policy as it currently is?
Yes.
Okay, so all this policy is changing then is the under 6 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
6 or less.
6 or less, okay, thank you.
Which is what we had before.
Right, yeah, understand.
Did we have a motion yet?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Can we have a motion to approve this?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Spring, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, that concludes our non-consent items, information. We have the first reading of policies.
No, we've got strategic plan report.
Oh, right. Do we need these are information items only, aren't they? Or do we have a yeah, the next two are
Information.
information. Or are we supposed to hear about the strategic plan? Yash? It says written reports, but if you all want to talk, let's do it.
We'll make this quick.
Yeah, we'll make it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, President Cervantes, you do have a annual report on the strategic plan that was presented at the work session earlier. I was able to cover the highlights from that plan, as well as some of the challenges that we've had this past year and how we expect to address that. Yash was not available at that meeting because he was at another meeting, but I'd like to give him the opportunity if he would so choose.
I'll keep it very short. One of the reasons why we've been successful is thanks to the support from the governing board and the president and members of the SFCC staff and faculty members who've been using data and continuous quality improvement as a foundation for our decision-making process. And so the credit goes to everybody at SFCC for doing some outstanding work, such as reaching our 20 by 20 goals early, having high levels of degrees and certificate completions, highest retention ever, all those things. So thank you.
And we stand for questions.
Did you all get all your questions out at the work session?
You've answered them all.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. All right, now on to the first reading. We're not going to do anything with that, right, are we?
Are we going to, I have a question for Laura on that.
Okay.
Not a wordsmithing question, but just a timing question. We didn't get a chance to go over these in the work session, but these two with the red lines in them,
Yes, it is rain.
are those from our attorney, the red lines from the attorney, or where did the red lines come from, the red?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President, Mr. Sullivan, are you talking about 1-24 and 1-31?
Right, yeah.
Those edits reflect the subcommittee's recommendations for edits to these. These have not yet been revised or reviewed by legal counsel. That happens after the entire board has looked at the policies during the first reading. And sometimes it's not required. It is only as advised by the president or elsewhere.
So, Madam Chair, I'm thinking now as to what our procedure should be. We have two policies here. We didn't have time to, we went through them once, but we haven't gotten the attorney's comments on them. Do we want to bring them back at the next board meeting for a first reading and then send them to the attorney? Or do we want to send them to the attorney now and get her comments and then let the subcommittee meet and then bring them back?
If I may?
With a white copy.
We did go through policy 1-24, so the next step would be for me, if the board believes it's necessary, would be to send this to the attorney for legal review. And so the subcommittee would have the opportunity to review legal counsel as soon as I get it back, or the Tuesday or the day prior to the governing board's meeting, which in this case would be the 25th, I believe, or the 25th of September.
Okay, but we didn't get that's right, we did talk about that right at the end of the meeting.
Didn't do one.
We didn't do 131, so I guess we should postpone that then until the next meeting for the first reading? Is that what we're thinking?
That's at your discretion. Sometimes we have reviewed them in public session, sometimes they're done in the work session.
We can review them now if you want.
There's a lot of changes to these, and I'm feeling that we should have some more time with them, quite frankly.
This is a pretty in-depth
Yeah,
policy.
this is kind of the meat and potatoes.
At the next work session, or?
Work session and
And
first reading are pretty much the same thing. So what happens is you look at them in the work session and they move.
Let's put them on the work session for
Okay,
the next month.
September.
So would it be appropriate to table the first reading tonight?
Well, no, we're okay on 124.
We're not voting on that because it's first reading.
Yeah, we're not voting, but we're going to move 124 down to our legal troops. But we're not quite ready for 131 yet.
I think we can just roll over 131.
Okay.
We can just
First reading.
To keep it on first reading.
keep it on first reading, and,
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah, I just want to clarify that for the subcommittee.
great.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help on that.
So let's go on to board reports. George, you want to give us the briefest update of College Promise? Just, what you're doing?
Yes. College Promise continues to be a very popular program throughout the country. It states, individual colleges are continuing to support the idea of free tuition. One of the more interesting ones recently was New York University decided to do it for their medical students, which was fascinating because it's a very expensive education, but they were willing to do it for the medical students. As far as College Promise, here, I think that we have done much of the necessary research with the help of Yash and some other people here at the with the financial aid office here. And I think now the question really comes back to the board, to the governing board, and to the foundation board, to what other questions do they have about the program before embracing it and taking a next step. And a next step could be a variety of things. I think one that we had suggested earlier was to form a task force within the college to look at it more closely. We looked at it when I was working with Fred Nugent and Joe earlier. We looked at it as somewhat as outsiders, but I think to look at how would this program work within the college requires people within the college to look at that. And certainly, I haven't seen any more recent research, but obviously when we were talking earlier today about enrollment issues, every place that has the program talks about enrollment increases. And they talk about the program as being a transformational program, both for the institution and for the community.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, George, one thing that you might find useful is to get on Martha Cantor's Facebook account, because she almost daily posts things about up-and-coming things that are happening with College Promise. Colleges that are coming on newly, or other developments that are working. And she's incredibly informative in those, so that might be something that you want. Her last name is Kanter. The other thing I would say is that very early on, when I first talked with you and Fred, she had said she was willing to come out and talk to our community about College Promise. She's the national director of College Promise.
Right.
So, and a former undersecretary under the Obama administration. So she might still be willing to come out, and that might give us some energy to think about how to move forward. And she might probably have some suggestions for that. So that might be something that we should pursue.
Okay, thank you.
This is a question for Yash. So we can have, you already have this picture, right, of where the source of payment is for every single student on this campus, right? You can say, okay, these people have lottery scholarships, and these people have Pell, and these students have private money, and so you have that picture, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I don't think I've ever, I mean, I know we get some of it in the enrollment reports, but that in a picture would be very helpful for me to see where the gaps are. Because I think for me, one of the biggest gaps are the students who come back to school from years of being in the workforce, and they may make enough money, but not enough money to pay tuition, and that there are gap areas that we should analyze.
Yes, and I think one of the joy of working at SFCC is an institution that values equity. And if you're thinking about equity issues and what is the biggest barrier for students in our community, especially underserved students, access to higher education, it's really the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we got to keep in mind as an institution is that FAFSA and the application process for the college is the two biggest barriers for our students to get there. So if you want to ensure the resources going to the right place and making a difference in our community, this may be a worthwhile items to consider. The question isn't whether or not it's helpful. The question is, how do we want to allocate our resources? Where do we want to allocate our resources? What is the best way to close that equity opportunity gap? And so I'll be happy to do a presentation about where the financial aid money is coming from. It's not making all the tuition free, as Board Member Gamble has done many presentations in the past. You know, there's multiple models, first dollar, last dollar. And so I think as you're thinking about the next iteration of community college, this is something that may benefit the board and the institution to consider.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I might also add that one of the areas that's a little difficult to measure at this point is, given the economics being an obstacle, what we know about students who do not return after the first year, and students who go from full-time to part-time. And if we're concerned about those kind of transitions, certainly something like College Promise would change those numbers. How much it changes them is anyone's guess. At some places there was an increase of incredible increase from part-time to full-time.
And the part-time data is accessible. The data on the students who leave is harder to get because those students are very transient. It's hard to have phone numbers that are accurate. It's hard to have addresses that are accurate. So unless you can get those at an exit interview, which is very seldom because some of them just disappear, right. That data is very hard to come by. But the part-time to full-time should be possible to get.
Yeah, what's not possible is estimating what percentage of those students who go part-time would in fact go full-time if they had the additional financial support. That's the thing that one doesn't know.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think when we talked about, or when George gave a very good presentation about this a while back, one thing that stuck with me was that the current programs that are successful are mostly volunteer, garage sales and that type of thing, significant garage sales, big garage sales, and that kind of commitment from the community to do that. I think it would be good, and if we have a national expert come in, that would be good too, to look at the financing alternatives. How could we do that other than garage sales? I mean, there's, I think, more than 150 nonprofits in Santa Fe, and they're all requesting funds, and it's a difficult paradigm. But nonetheless, there might be a fiscal way. I don't know whether it's with mill levies or whether it's with, or what it is, but I certainly would be interested in talking about a pilot program where we don't necessarily apply it to everyone, but we apply it to somewhere that we feel it would benefit the college the most, where we're getting the most dropouts, or where we're getting, where we see from our boots on the ground that we have the biggest need, or the biggest unfilled need. And I don't know how you analyze that either. That's the $64 question. But if we could, I'm always in favor of pilot programs because we start small, and if they're successful, then we ramp them up, and if they don't succeed, we just quietly ramp them down, and nobody is disappointed too badly. So is something like that possible, do you think, a pilot?
Absolutely. Yes. There are programs around the country that have focused, for example, on allied health programs. So it was only for students that went into allied health programs.
So we would have to think about, is that where our need is?
Right.
Are the students in that program the most disadvantaged, or are the students in trades and technology programs the most disadvantaged, or just where might that occur? But I'm certainly supportive of the concept, and I hope we move it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martha, search.
Okay, I have two reports. I have one report on the search process and one report from New Mexico First. Since my last report, Linda and I have engaged with a number of activities, and I want to go through those because we gave a brief synopsis at the convocation, but there's an awful lot of action that we have been engaging in from that time. So since we discussed our process with the board, and I was really surprised to go back on my notes and discover that we started this conversation in last November, and that it has been ongoing almost the total time, and that was when Linda had asked me to chair the committee, and then I agreed that I would work that way if she would co-chair. So that's been a very long time. One of the first things we did was to work with President Cervantes to identify the staff who would be helping us prepare material. And that has involved Yash, it has involved Toby, it has involved Chad Lovato, it has involved more recently the HR director, Terrence, and a number. Donna has been an incredible help, as was Rosemary before her, and a lot of Todd's staff in the HR department have been involved with us. Then we met by phone. The board met by phone with the consultant who replaced the original consultant who had to go in for some serious surgery and had to exit the search, Eric Richmeyer. And the board approved the replacement of the consultant who had to drop out. We finalized a timeline, and Linda, chime in whenever you can. The board we finalized the timeline with the consultants, and that took a considerable amount of time back and forth. One of the things we discovered, thanks to President Cervantes, was that we were scheduling a significant amount of activity on this campus on Martin Luther King Day, and that wasn't going to work very well. We sent them, thanks to Yash, a lot of demographic information. They requested all of our planning documents, the economic report that was done on and that had been presented to the board several months ago, and the audit report. They also wanted background materials on the previous search and wanted to really understand how we had gotten into the situation we had gotten into. And so we've had considerable conversations about that, discussed the role of the search committee, discussed the role of the board and how the consultant did or did not work with the board. And then we've had conversations about the Santa Fe community, and particularly with a consultant from Washington, D.C., who doesn't know this region as well, although he has relatives in Albuquerque, as he might. So we've had a lot of conversation about our Hispanic serving institution status, about the nature of the Santa Fe area and this community. We sent them the names of the search committee, and then discussed a preliminary, we're working on agendas for both the advisory committee meeting. The first meeting will be on the 6th of September. The consultants will be on campus. And one of the things that we discussed was the confidentiality form that they ask all the search committee members and the board to sign. This is a proprietary document. They do not send blank pieces of that document out because it is proprietary, but it is not a non-disclosure agreement. It is a confidentiality question form that basically says, the work that the search committee is going to do and the work that the board will be engaged in will not disclose the names of applicants or process questions such as what kinds of questions are going to be asked of the candidates, that kind of thing. So that will be done at their first meeting on the campus. We discussed with them the announcements that PR prepared for the listening sessions. I think they were quite impressed with the work that the PR department has done. Thank you, Todd, and to all your staff. Those have been really well done, and boy, did they take a lot of pressure off of me particularly. But also, I think the consultants were pleased to see the level of professionalism that we were demonstrating. We have worked with Donna to prepare the mailing lists and had a long conversation with Todd and his staff about whether a letter was better or a postcard was better or whether a poster was better. And I think we got some resolution on that, and they convinced me that a letter was the worst thing you could do to send people something to invite them to the listening sessions. The listening sessions will be open to anyone who's interested, internal community, campus community, external campus community, but we will also send some specific invitations to lists that the board has helped put together and that we have gotten from many other sources. We had a long conversation with the search consultants about the fact that Linda and I do not want to participate with the search committee. Part of that has to do with the fact that we want particularly the campus community, to be as open as they are willing to be, and that our presence might inhibit that because we are board members. And so we had a long conversation about that. Then the consultants finally agreed that that was okay. But then they wanted to be sure that we assigned a chair to facilitate the conversations, to keep the search committee on board, that kind of thing. So we have asked Terrence Donaldson to serve that role in an ex officio capacity. And then Donna will also be there to kind of help with logistics. Typically, we don't keep minutes of search committee meetings, and that again is part of wanting to have as open a conversation as possible and to get as many perspectives as possible. We have reviewed and finalized the charge document that Linda will distribute. Linda and I will attend the beginning of the first search committee meeting simply to welcome people and to thank them for serving, and to distribute the charge that we give to the board, to the committee, to the search committee from the board. So Linda will be presenting that document to them, and basically it says this is the kind of advice that we need from you and that we hope you will be able to provide us. see, we received the review of the representative salaries, which we discussed at the work session, from both the consultants and material that Yash put together. We talked about the fact that there are many colleges in New Mexico that require a NIPRA request before we can get either the board contract or the board information about the president's salary. We've sent out the press releases on the listening sessions. You probably saw them in the newspaper. There will be another one coming, and that will be coming closer to the time when the listening sessions will occur. And we will also be sending out the invitations that Donna has been preparing for the people that will get specific invitations to make sure that they see and want to come. Ken, we worked with Ken to clarify, and he gave us some information at the work session about the specifics of how money gets transferred between the consultants and us. Donna has scheduled meetings with the president will not be here when they are here, so they will be meeting with the president before they arrive. But Donna has scheduled meetings with the VPs, the deans, the faculty senate, the staff senate, and I was just talking to Naomi about whether it was possible or even whether they were interested in meeting with the consultants as the Student Government Association. So we'll find out about that. The consultants have agreed, after quite a bit of discussion, that they will come in on September 5th so that they can have an extensive tour of the campus. They had not, they had thought that they would need only about a half hour for that. And we were convinced that that was not enough. And they said, oh, we go to really large districts and we only do half an hour. And we said, well, you need to have enough time to really know Santa Fe Community College and what it does. So they agreed to come in on the 5th, and Marcus will be conducting an extensive tour on the campus. The consultants have experience with the kind of questions that they will use to elicit feedback in the listening sessions, and we haven't finalized that yet. We haven't seen those yet.
Now, they're going to give us a report because they're going to meet with us later after those.
Yes, after the listening sessions are finished, which will be on the 7th, there will be 5 listening sessions, 3 on the 6th and 2 on the 7th. And then they will meet with the board, and they will be able to give us some preliminary review of what the listening sessions elicited. And then they will give us a more substantial report after they have time to really look at their notes carefully. So that will begin. We have finalized travel arrangements with them and finalized who should make them and how they should be made. And Donna has made arrangements for them to be in Santa Fe. We had another long conversation about why Linda and I thought that it was a good idea for the semifinalists to come to the campus. Their advice was that we should meet at a neutral location. Initially, they had suggested the Albuquerque airport, and we said there was no way that this search committee was going to travel to Albuquerque to meet at the airport, and they sort of understood that. But then they wondered whether we should meet in a neutral location in Santa Fe. I think, Linda, you may want to talk about your position about why they need to come on the campus.
Well, they need to see the campus, first of all, if they're serious about becoming a finalist for the position. And it's going to, I think the reason they wanted the neutral site is so that they're not seen anywhere applying for another job. But the reality is that
so their sense of confidentiality is that if they meet in a neutral place, they would they would not be identified as, oh, here's somebody coming to interview for the presidency. We assured them that we could handle that, and when they come, we will look through various locations on campus, and they can decide where that should be. So we finally prevailed on that. And then, of course, as required by New Mexico law, the finalists have to be publicly identified 21 days before they come to interview with the board.
5 finalists.
5 finalists, right. So we then had the convocation update for most of the campus. So I think all of those things have been in the works. We have been working hard and meeting with them by telephone quite a bit. One of the things that I think we need to be really clear about is that when they will design the brochure, the recruitment brochure, that's part of their contract, but that brochure will be designed after they have really analyzed the listening sessions, after they have met with the board about what the board wants to see in terms of characteristics for a president, what are important elements that the board needs to have in the candidates. And then that brochure draft will be sent to the search committee, who will then have a chance to look at that and make whatever changes they think are pertinent to this community. And then that brochure will come back after the consultants have reviewed it and made whatever changes they think need to be made. That brochure comes back to the board. And the board then will have the opportunity to review that brochure, to make whatever changes they think are important to the recruitment brochure before it ever goes out in any kind of message, either ad or recruitment brochures that get mailed out as they begin to recruit candidates, and as they begin to send the brochure out to people who call them who are interested, or to people whom they receive nominations from. So one of the processes of having a new president is that there are often people in the higher ed community, which is not as large as one would think, who make nominations. So there may be sitting presidents who make I have this vice president that is ready, or I know this other president who is interested in making a change, those sorts of things. And so they might send nomination letters to the consultants, and that, that gets vetted through them. The search committee will have a process that they will describe about how they will evaluate the applicants that we get, and using the criteria that is set out by the board and ultimately by the board to be included in the brochure. So all of those things are in the works. That's where we are.
So we'll have to have some special board meetings to approve these things.
Right.
Okay, yes, Jack.
Counselor. I had a couple of questions, Madam Chair. We had on our work session agenda the discussion of the characteristics and salary requirements for the presidential search. The first thing we talked about was salary requirements. We looked at some information that the community college had gotten together and the consultant got together, but we didn't come to any decision. Are we going to talk and decide about the salary requirements?
Absolutely. We have to.
And when do we do that?
Have to.
That will be part of the conversation that we have with the consultants when we meet with them.
I guess the concern I have is that everything that we're supposed to be participating on, which is very little, is put off to some future date when we get some recommendation from the consultant. So I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah, and so if the board's not going to specify any salary requirements, then
The board will have to.
that's their decision.
The board will have to decide the characteristics, the board will have to decide what the salary is gonna be, what the benefits offered. I mean, we have to make that decision.
The search consultants might give us advice,
They might give
but
us-
ultimately, it's the board who makes decisions on all of this.
On the characteristics, I've given some thought to that.
Good.
And I would like to see that the consultants to understand, and I have no understanding or communication that they do understand it, that Santa Fe Community College has unique requirements of its community interaction. And we want a board president who has an understanding of the culture of our community and its students, the faculty relations, an understanding of the fiscal challenges that we face, and we want, at least I do, a listening president who can motivate all the stakeholders that we deal with daily, earn their trust, as well as be responsive to the board. So those are things I think are important. I don't want to pop those out in a gang meeting at the last minute. I want them to think about that ahead of time. I understand they've interacted with Member Romero and vice versa, and that's fine, and we appreciate the time that Member Romero has put into this effort. But there are 4 other board members on this governing board. So I think the time is now to get our input into the process. Regarding the confidentiality agreement, or the alleged confidentiality agreement, is this going to be reviewed by our legal counsel?
That's a proprietary document that they use, and it will not be reviewed.
Okay, so we, on September 5th or 6th or 7th, we're going to have a document stuck in front of us and told to sign with no time to receive comments from legal counsel on that.
Well, I can ask if they would consider that.
I wouldn't ask, I would tell. I think, and let me go a little further on confidentiality agreements. I can appreciate the need to do that with your committee members who are community members and who have occasional relationships with Santa Fe Community College. I don't appreciate the need for board members to do that. Board members are bound by Santa Fe Community College policies, and those policies are very explicit with regard to confidentiality. Has this search consultant been given a copy of our policies?
Yes, they
Okay.
have reviewed our policy.
Then perhaps.
They have probably not reviewed the new ones that we.
Okay. Well, either way, I suggest to you that they review them again with regard to confidentiality, because there is absolutely no need for the community college board members to sign confidentiality agreements other than to provide some type of legal out for the search consultants if they fail in their duties under the contract. So I
would have to push back on that, I mean, we haven't seen it, but a confidentiality.
I know we haven't seen it.
Agreement is about not revealing, that would be the only relevant thing here, not revealing the names of people.
I don't know what it's about. I don't know what it's about, Madam Chair, but I have a great deal of angst about walking into a meeting on September 7th and signing a confidentiality agreement that no one has looked at except a Washington, D.C. search consulting firm. I have a great deal of angst about that. So I think, and I would appreciate that issue being addressed, and I would certainly appreciate our legal counsel advising on the need for our board to sign such a document and on the content of that document. I am not impressed with this consultant firm so far, and I'm certainly impressed with the work that Member Romero has done with them based on her report. I contacted him myself to receive a copy of this confidentiality agreement, and not only was I denied it, but they never responded to me. So I was stonewalled.
And we did talk about that, Jack, that we have the process, the contact with the consultants is the person that we have assigned to that.
I think that's
Now,
fine.
I understand about the confidentiality, and hopefully we can get it and have Lynn review it. But it is a standard thing in every search I've been involved in. It's simply a document saying you're not going to tell who the people are. And yes, okay, we need to see it.
I think we need to see it. Certainly I need to see it, and I can assure you of that.
Well, they sent me a copy of your emails, and I could not respond because that would have created could have created some issues. But they basically said they work with boards all over the country, and they understand how boards work. And Linda and I had been assigned to be the liaisons with the search committee, and they understand that the board makes decisions as one entity, and that is how board decisions move forward, and that's how they're trying to work.
I just hope that when they conduct these listening sessions, that they're better at listening and communicating than they have been so far with me. I think, and my concern is the community college's past experience and most recent experience with engaging a search consultant resulted in an effort which did not, to the best of my knowledge, actively involve all the board members, and resulted in
Well, that's not
the
quite
final
true.
conclusion.
It's not quite true, and you weren't here.
Right, but at least the reports in the paper, and the reports in the paper, of course, may not be accurate, or may be partially accurate, but the result, I think, was not one that the college ended up being comfortable with. So
That's not the search firm.
and then we're now using a different search firm, which certainly is good, but I have a concern with a search firm dominated and directed search. I think that we are a community that is a very well-educated community, is very involved in our community, is very proud of our community, and is very cognizant of the nuances of this college, what it needs, what it's our commitment to it. I don't feel so far that commitment or that understanding on the part of this search consulting firm. So I feel that board members, certainly there are only 5 of us, they could have a minute to respond to us and say, gee, this document, we're not going to give it to you until September 7th. You know, it wouldn't make me happy, but at least they could respond. Or they could say, we're going to give it to Member Romero as the prime contact, and you can talk to her and she'll show it to you, which they didn't say. Or they could just go about their business the way they normally do, which is my primary concern.
Which is what they said was that they would have the document, they would explain the document when we met, and we would have an opportunity to ask whatever questions we had. It's probably a 2-sentence document that isn't that difficult. I mean, I've seen, Cecilia, you've probably also signed numerous confidentiality agreements for searches. So, you know, they're simple statements.
Perhaps the resolution to this is to engage our council with the search firm, just have them discuss separately the mysterious confidentiality agreement, and come up with a solution that hopefully would be that board members already have an obligation of confidentiality in a number of college actions that they take. And I take that confidentiality requirement very seriously. I don't like people stuffing it down my throat. So that may sound a little brash, but I think we need to draw a line at the board's responsibilities in this effort and the search committee's responsibilities beyond the contract. And I will mention, just as an aside, that there is no provision in their contract with Santa Fe Community College that specifies or mandates that board members should sign a confidentiality agreement. And in my business, I'm used to dealing with contracts. Good contracts make good neighbors. And so this is not in there. So thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my comments, and I do want to make them in no way as a criticism of the work that Member Romero has done. I appreciate that work. I understand the personal commitment she has made in taking this on, but I also feel I have a personal commitment to the process.
Well, Chair Stiegel has been quite involved with it as well, so I can't. My other report is about New Mexico First.
Okay.
Just
Yes.
one question. Do we have a date? Do we have a
Yes.
scheduled time
Yes.
for when the board, will meet with the consultants?
I have sent that out to you.
You have?
Yes, it's
Okay.
September 7th. After they have been through the listening sessions, they have a meeting scheduled with us.
Okay.
The whole schedule is on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've gotten the entire schedule.
Okay.
You've gotten the schedule of meetings after that as well. So
Right.
you should have that. If you don't have it, let me know and I'll send you another one.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mexico First.
So New Mexico First. I sat in today on a review of a proposal, and I see that oh no, she hasn't left. She's still here. That they are proposing to ConAgra a fairly large proposal on one. Last spring, and Kathy, you may know more about the thing then because you were more involved with New Mexico First at that point than I was.
Is it the New Mexico First thing we all went to, or some of
Yeah,
us went to?
yeah, the forums that they had.
Yeah.
And they had them all over the state, and it came up with a series of resolutions. One of those resolutions they have used to propose to ConAgra, the ConAgra Foundation, a very interesting proposal that they asked me to sit in as they had a site visit from ConAgra today to review the proposal with the ConAgra staff. And one of the things that's very interesting about that proposal, there are two things that they are asking for money for. One is to begin the process of developing a statewide career pathway for health careers, because that seemed to be from the forums the most critical need throughout the state, and they're understanding that every institution doing its own little plan does not really get us the professionals that we need to really provide good health care in this state, particularly for underserved populations, but generally for elderly people, for youth, for youngsters, really young babies. So that proposal, that is one of the proposals that they are asking money for. And the other thing is more generally to think about how to expand the workforce opportunities, perhaps through mentorships in healthcare, but also in other technology being another one, in other careers. So it was a very interesting conversation to sit in on. And they will be hearing, I guess, in a couple of weeks whether they get any funding from ConAgra. They're seeking funding from other sources as well. But they're following up on those forums as with the most critical of the recommendations that were made as a result of that. So I just wanted to let the board know and to let the community, the college community know that that kind of help might be forthcoming from in terms of healthcare, careers, and mentoring and offering opportunities for our students.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, a quick comment on that. Of course, as you probably know, the allied health people here, they have a proposal in for developing LPNs.
From Cone Alma. It's
From-
different, yeah.
That's right, that's right. But I'm just saying as a pipeline, another allied health pipeline that's being,
Well, I think everybody knows how badly we need good medical services at all levels.
right, right.
One of the elements in their proposal was to talk about how few New Mexicans serve in health careers in this state, particularly at the doctoral level. And how could they expand that? How could they create pathways that would lead to greater careers for doctors who understood the culture of this state, the healthcare cultural idiosyncrasies of our many populations, and how can they work to prepare people to understand that, and instead of bringing people in who haven't a clue about the healthcare culture in this state. Kathy had a comment.
I just had something else, so.
Okay, go.
So, are you?
I'm done.
All right, if you're done with your report. I just had one small thing to mention. So the college, in conjunction with Innovate Educate, which is a nationwide nonprofit based here in Santa Fe, and the Santa Fe Community Foundation conducted a report called Skill Up Santa Fe, an Employer Workforce Survey. It was pretty impressive. There were 126 businesses that responded. I went to a meeting, just a briefing on it, that was held for the business community. It was one of those things in our retreat that I'd love for us to share with the board because I thought it was a really good report and insightful. One of the most interesting things about the employer responses in terms of their needs in terms of workforce training is that over 50% of them said that they would like to invest in additional training for their current employees, which I think is interesting for the college to think too. I know we think a lot about getting people into the workforce and how we do that, but I think there was some really good input from local employers about the need for continuing training to update skills once people are already in the workforce.
So that's a report that's going to come out?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Good.
So
that'll
I'd
be
love
part
for
of our-
us to get copies of that out to
Yeah.
the board so that we can review it, especially before the October planning session.
Right, yeah.
Great.
Well, I'll just give one little update for those of you who haven't heard. At the LFC today in Taos, they announced that we have $1.2 billion of new revenue for the state of New Mexico. But most of it will be considered non-recurring because it's mostly from gas and oil. So that's pretty shocking. We've never had that much in a year.
Really? We'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you all. Second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Are we doing a closed session?
No, no closed session, nothing to talk about. Wow.
Nice. We've already talked about it. Okay. Yay, well, that was good news. Wow.